Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's lesson on the timeline of life. So, last Friday, we learned about the Devonian period here and the expansion of the fish in the ocean and how we called that the age of fishes. And today, we're going to learn about the next period on the timeline of life, which is called the Carboniferous period, right here. The Carboniferous period is the fifth period of the Paleozoic era. Here's the Paleozoic era, and here's the Carboniferous period, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the fifth period. It lasted about 60 million years from 359 million years ago at the end of the Devonian period to 299 million years ago at the beginning when the Permian period started. And we notice again that we have another one of these blue jagged marks at the end of the period. And we know that that means there was an ice age that ended the Carboniferous period. The Carboniferous period is also somewhat unique in that it is a lot of times divided into two periods called epochs. The first part, or the lower part of the Carboniferous period, is called the Mississippian epoch. And the second part, or the upper part of the Carboniferous period, is called the Pennsylvanian epoch. And those are not marked on our timeline, but those are things you will probably see sometimes on other timelines of the Paleozoic era. In the Carboniferous period, life on land was evolving in many different ways. If you remember from when the Devonian period, we talked about how Gondwana, the supercontinent, and Euramerica were getting closer and closer together. And that continued to happen during the Carboniferous period. Those two land masses started running into each other and combining to what will one day, here in the future, be known as Pangea, and another supercontinent. But as those land masses combined, some of the ocean that was in between them kind of got trapped in the land and became swampy areas that were perfect for plant life to expand. And so we see a lot of forests grow much bigger. Plants are growing much bigger. Forests are growing much bigger. And all of these plants, and we see some of them here on our timeline. We see ferns and some trees, and we see that some of the first ferns begin to develop woody tissues and roots, which are the beginnings of the kinds of trees that we see today. All of those plants were producing a lot of oxygen in the air. And with lots and lots of oxygen in the air, the insects that had adapted to live on land were able to grow much bigger. In fact, insects during the Carboniferous period were the biggest that they have ever been on Earth. Some of them were even up to 6 feet long, which is as tall as a grown man. And so all of these kinds of life were just flourishing. They were just massive trees and massive insects everywhere in these very, very large swampy areas on Earth. The other part of life on the land that was expanding were the tetrapods. And if you remember from the Devonian period, the tetrapods were the first animals that come out of the ocean and live on land, the ones where the fish, where their fins evolved into legs. And so our tetrapods are our land animals with 4 legs. The tetrapods, they split into 2 groups at the beginning of the Carboniferous period. The first group was the amphibians, which laid their eggs in water. And the second group was called the amniotes. The amniotes, they developed harder shells, leathery shells, and laid their eggs on land. As the Carboniferous period continued, the amniotes, they split again. They divided again into two groups. And those groups were called the synapsids, which eventually became mammals, and the sauropsids, which became the reptiles and the dinosaurs. And so we see lots of new life starting in this time period. And so the other really interesting thing about the Carboniferous period is that there were no decomposers. Decomposers hadn't evolved yet. And decomposers are the bacterias and the very tiny animals that break down dead things. And so during the Carboniferous period, all the trees and ferns and plants and things that died, they didn't break down. They just layered on top of each other over and over and over and over again. And every time there was a new layer on top, it put more weight on the layers below, and they pressed and pressed and pressed together for millions and millions and millions of years until they eventually became the rocks that we know today as limestone and coal. And we still find huge deposits of limestone and coal on the earth today. And those are all, a lot of them, from the Carboniferous period. So today on our timeline, we are going to add the pictures for the Carboniferous period. And since this period is a little bit bigger, we see that we have quite a few more pictures today. So we have some plant pictures of our trees and our ferns from the Carboniferous period. We also see that we have sharks to add. Okay. We see that we have the appearance of fish with arched fins. And some of those are very similar to sharks. And we also see unarmored fish, because our placoderms, our armored fish, they went extinct at the end of the Devonian period. But we still have unarmored fish with cartilaginous and bony skeletons, which first developed in the Devonian period. And we see some of those fish develop a forked tail. Here's our amphibian that evolved, and our insect. This is a dragonfly, or an ancestor of a dragonfly. This was much, much bigger than a dragonfly. And so we are going to add in all of those pictures to our timeline on the bottom. And so as I've been cutting my papers out, I have now a couple of pieces. These were bits from the bottom of my big piece of paper. And I see a lot of the pictures I'm looking for right down here on my smaller bits of paper. So I see here all of those plants, my arboreal mosses or arboreal ferns, and my carboniferous trees. I'm going to cut those out. There. And they are on my timeline close to my ice age at the end of the Carboniferous period. So I am going to put those right there. Here we go. And we also have this one, this fern, which I see right here. Cut off the extra paper there. There we go. And that goes right here. There we go. And let's see, I'm going to go back to the beginning of the Carboniferous period and make sure I get all of these. I have my shark. And I don't see it on this piece. It is right here. Okay, and this one too. So I'm going to cut out both of these. Here's my little shark, and here is my small unarmored fish. This one's kind of very small. There we go. So my shark, it goes right here, see, near the marsh plant. So put him right in there. And then here in this space, we don't have anything. The other fish, it goes down here. And here it is. I almost lost it. Blended in very nicely. There we go. Stick it right on there. Now I already have my ammonite on there. Okay, so now I have my fish with the forked tail. And I see it right here on my paper. And I also see my amphibian and my dragonflies. So I have all of the rest of the ones I need right here on this small piece of paper. And so these are all the rest of the pictures that were on the bottom part of the big paper of animal pictures, animal and plant pictures. Now my forked tail fish goes right here. It's kind of right underneath that little funky spot. It goes right there. And then my amphibian goes right underneath that. There we go. And last but not least, down here at the bottom, I'm going to put my dragonflies. And since they're close together on the paper, I'm going to cut them out together as one picture. Just like we did with all of those plants. We're nice and close together. Made it easy. There we go. And my dragonflies go right here. So I hope you guys have fun doing your timeline today. And also, I hope that you have fun with the lesson. I will see you next week.